How you been?
Oh, pretty good, mate. Yeah, we just, like I said in the email, we just sort of got back from Sydney there and had a pretty good time of it. So that was our sort of first foray into that particular world up there. And I think we made a bit of a footprint thanks to Kevin Bennett and the flood. So we'll try and keep on top of it, of course, and keep going back if we can.
Good stuff. Well, hopefully we'll see you down this part of the world, but I'll keep knocking on some doors, mate.
Yeah, that's okay. Look, Sam took a trip over there and, tried to, actually I think got a chance to go around with an agent or two to some gigs, but nothing's ever eventuated from it. Like, no one got back, and so we're still sort of pondering the meaning of life according to South Australia. I mean, basically we'd like to play anywhere, as you, I'm sure you could imagine, but, it's kind of tough, you know.
Yeah, and I don't understand that. There's a lot of guys doing similar things to what you do that come to South Australia and do the winery thing and do a lot of different venues, and it works spectacularly well. And I'm surprised, but we will keep on it.
Yeah, no worries, mate. Let's talk about whatever it is you decided to get in touch with this new release, I guess. That's
right. Well, a new release from 1970, mate.
Oh, God, yeah. I mean, you got to tell, as I said to you also on the email, like Phil Manning had just got in touch with me, in actual fact, pre your contact to me. And he said, did you know Aztec are re-releasing the Chain Live? And I said, well, no, I didn't. And, the biggest sort of chuckle on my behalf is that occasionally I'll get like a royalty check from APRA with about $2.64 worth of chain sort of finance coming through to me, you know. Look, I can sort of add, like if you throw some questions at me, I might be able to sort of answer them in due course. But look, all I remember about the time was that for music in general, it was an exciting period. And, Chain had, from my memory, been up in Newcastle, and we'd been attempting to sort of try and rehearse the band and get it ready for, some live performance work and hopefully continuing on into the career. But I seem to remember, and Phil and I were joking about some of the issues that went on that particular session and how crude and sort of rustic it was. And yet, look, so was a lot of things in those days, and personally speaking, I'm actually still in favour of a lot of those type of kind of weird and wonderful recordings, you know.
Well, when you listen to it now, it's got a certain magic about it. It just captures, I guess, what the band was like live at that time. Without any polish and no bells and whistles, and that's a lovely thing.
Yeah. Well, it certainly was no bells and whistles, and I mean, from Phil and I were discussing it, and I think our memory produces something like John Zuleika sitting in the toilets of the, I think it was either William or King Street, I actually can't remember, and with two sort of two-track recording machines, with the leads going out into the actual room where we were playing, and of course away we went. Now, I have to say on my behalf that I was pretty naive in terms of how the music got laid down, because Keegan and Warren Morgan and Phil and the rest of the guys were very used to jamming and were able to really work their way and basically jam endlessly, which was, as you can remember, a lot of what was going on in those days. And I often tended to struggle outside of straight blues format songs, right? So it was always interesting, and of course they used to launch off into many different areas, as I'm sure you've either heard or you're aware.
Indeed. So you'd only recently come over from New Zealand was that with Larry's Rebels at that time?
Yeah, well, basically what had happened is that had been playing music in New Zealand. Larry's Rebels were obviously a number one sort of pop outfit over there, and they'd been to Australia about 4 or 5 times already as Larry's Rebels. Well, of the year of '69, Larry got busted in New Zealand, and the guys used to come down to a regular gig I played in Auckland with a band I was in, and we were sort of quite good acquaintances and chums. and they just said, oh, look, Larry's gone, do you want to do some vocal stuff? Here's the deal, we're going to tour New Zealand, we're recording, and we're going to Australia. And of course, the moment they mentioned sort of like travel to Australia, it was like, well, yeah, that sounds great to me, let's rock. So I recorded with the band an introductory album. We had a #1 single over there, and we're only there for about a month, and we came over here. Let's see, I'm trying to think of Bennington and Russell or someone were the sort of top 2 kind of agents in Auckland, and they had a fellow kind of friend over here, Dennis Smith in actual fact, who took us on and had worked with the Rebels. We came over, I think it was March the 30th of '69, and proceeded to launch into, whatever work was available that he could get. Unfortunately, there were many different sort of things in the band and reasons why it folded. But at the end of that year, pretty much, the Rebels busted up. And at that stage also, we'd had sort of quite a wide variety of, connection with a lot of Australian acts. And the guys from, the Chain and stuff, I ended up sort of living with them in Melbourne, and sort of away we went, just playing. Yeah.
But it's an interesting period of the band because Australians tend to recall, or Chain is still going, of course, but they associate Chain, A, with Matt Taylor, who wasn't in the band at that stage, but also with the one guitar of Phil Manning. So it's a very interesting recording that A, it's got no Matt Taylor, but the 2 guitars from you and Phil Manning is very interesting indeed.
Yeah, well, the only reason, I knew about it because the 4-piece, which included Phil, Barry Sullivan, Barry Harvey and Warren, had come down from Sydney after Wendy Saddington departed. And they came down as a 4-piece. And at that particular point I was floating around, and we were all sort of like friends and stuff and connections. And somehow, I just happened to get into the band. So obviously that worked. But that outfit only, again, from my own memory, and it's a fair while back, but it only really lasted about a year, during which time we left Victoria and went up to New South Wales to try our sort of potential in moving on and getting into a different market as well. So initially we went straight through to Newcastle and rehearsed a lot, and then we actually, you may remember a gig then called Bus Stop that was run by a Dutch guy, and we rehearsed and lived there. It might have been 1 or 2 months. I actually can't remember the length of time. Then we went down to Sydney and tried to work, etc. But I don't know. I mean, the band was pulled in many different directions. LG was very sort of jazz orientated. Phil was a blues guy. I mean, it was a kind of a strange thing. Anyway, the band busted up, and I took off overseas after that for about a year and a bit. And during that time, Matt Taylor joined the outfit as the lead singer, and there was a 3-piece backing thing, as you know, which I think probably was their strongest and most recorded successful period. Black and Blue and those particular sort of songs and the album titles came out of it. So, I was overseas and missed all of the fun. So then obviously I came back. Matt had gone at that point, and the original lineup that I was in rejoined again. Somehow the guys found out that I was up in Darwin when I came back and got hold of me, and of course I sort of, got dragged into the madness again, and away we went. Well, again, so much water had gone under the bridge that I think, our musical differences all just stuck out in different directions, and again, we only lasted about 8 or 9 months from my memory. And that was the end of that. During which time, I might add, we recorded a second Chain live album. So there was another one in there as well.
Another one to be re-released somewhere shortly, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, as you know, Phil could sort of basically have an anthology sort of album collection totally on his own of his entire history with, Chain and then obviously Phil Manning solo. So, but it's very interesting, and he rang me as I said, to let me know about this release, and he spoke greatly about Aztec Records and the great job they do. and how their reproduction is so far superior than anybody else that attempts the same sort of criteria, either Australia or internationally. So, Gil's got a fantastic thing going there, and he's been very successful with it. So,
and also the little gems that they reissue as well, and with this re-release, it's got an added gem from you on the road again, one of your tunes.
Yes. Well, I mean, therein lies the unusual context of sort of a whole bunch of stuff that comes and goes when you record, and like most of, well, certainly me in those days, I really had no idea about the world of publishing, songwriting and copyright. So consequently, all this stuff finds its, it's like kind of cream in milk. It floats to the surface somewhere. And at one stage I was involved with Festival Records with Copper Wine all those years ago.
Oh, yes, I remember.
And during that time, all this stuff that was actually on Mushroom's sort of back catalogue that was then purchased by Murdoch through Festival, blah, 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 all sort of like came to light. And there was always these strange opera kind of situations that used to float across in front of my eyes of songs, in actual fact, that I was never really involved in. Anyway, one of them came up that was Mr. President, that I was involved in on one of the Chain albums, which was a song of mine. And it may even be on this live thing. Anyway, it came to fruition that Festival had placed it for a soundtrack on some sort of movie overseas, or were going to. So all of this started to come there, and when it finally reached the cutting room floor, and the royalty aspect of it was going to be sort of pronounced and gone through, they put the wrong name on the actual movie credits for who wrote it.
Correct.
And in Festival's records, it was registered under Warren Morgan, who at that stage was living on the Central Coast. And anyway, to cut a long story short, Warren had to write, kindly wrote a letter to Festival saying, no, this is not my song, blah, 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 blah. But, of course, by this stage, the thing was already in the can. And it was done, dusted, and thank you very much. And I sort of had to go up there and try and talk to them and say, well, what the hell's going on? No, you've got your records wrong. And are we able to get it changed? No. Are we? And so, therefore, what's going to happen with royalties? And I said, this might be the only great song that I've ever written, and now it's on a piece of, it was actually, I think, only going to be released through video and go through to video outlets,
Oh.
And I said, well, even so. I said, what if it's in America and there's 280 million potential customers?
That's right.
And we've got a situation now where, theoretically, it's going to go to Warren. But as I said, he kindly wrote a letter and cleared that up. But, it just turned out to be a bit of a mess, to tell you the truth. But therein lies the world of, fabulous success,
The joys of publishing. Well, this is a lovely piece of history, but enough of history. What's happening in the wonderful world of the partners with you and Mr. Sam C?
Well, as I said, kind of primarily, we've really been trying to up the ante and workload this year. So the first part of it didn't, we've been helped by several agents here in Victoria and Melbourne and stuff. So, we continue like, 1,000 other, cottage industry, organic sort of duos or solo people around Australia trying to get work, right? So we're in there along with them, and, we apply to festivals. We've just managed to get ourselves up there via Kevin up to New South for the first little, onslaught. And we're now in the throes of recording a new original CD. So hopefully we should have the majority of the recording sort of finished by the end of June going into July. And we're looking at sort of end of August, hopefully, to have its release ready to rock.
Magnificent.
To cut a long story short again, it's more to do with trying to get that, and we'll see what reaction we get. Because it's the original world of a couple of sort of 60-year-old balding guys is an interesting one, And, of course, the majors aren't the slightest bit interested in our world. And that's got its good points, because the sort of music industry world and the mechanical world now have joined sort of forces to allow people like ourselves to have open outlets through YouTube and all this sort of stuff without too much assistance from, the majors. And I'm not discounting them by any chance, because if you were ever fortunate enough to get a deal of some type, they still have a lot of clout and a lot of distribution. They can cover a lot of demographics. But the fact remains is, no, at the moment we're not in that, and so we're just happy to follow our own little field and try to create our own area,
Fantastic, mate. Good news indeed. Look forward to hearing that, and as always, a pleasure to say hello.
Yeah, good on you, Michael. Look, thanks a lot, and we'll get a copy to you straight away as soon as we can get it down on the burnt piece of disc, as the saying goes.
Cheers, mate. Thank you very much.